Hello everyone and happy Sunday. So I'm guessing that you clicked on this video because you need some tips on how to study, or you're just curious about how I study, because I love watching these kind of videos and it's always good to kind of reevaluate how you're doing a certain process that you maybe don't think about, like studying, to see if there's any ways that you could do it better. So today I'm going to be sharing my tips and tricks that I have used throughout my past 2.5 years at college and high school that have helped me achieve good grades. Just in case you're like, who are you talking about? Do you actually have good grades? I have gotten the dean's list every semester that I've been in college, so this means I've gotten a 4.0. I am a business management student, and I'm taking marketing and HR classes also for reference. However, being a student is super important to me, and my grades are really important to me, as well as the learning. So these are some study tips that have helped me achieve those grades and have helped me really collect all the learning that I can throughout my college experience. So I'm going to try and break down very simple things into practical steps, because being like, study well, what are you going to use off that? But anyways, so my first piece of advice is to actually go to class. I know this sounds really obvious, however, so many people don't go to class and then they get their test grade back and they're like, why did I get this grade? I'm like, well, most teachers provide the information and stress the information that will be on the test in lecture. So it's so important to go into class. I know sleeping in may sound like the best thing to do, and sometimes it is. However, most of the time it's so beneficial to actually go sit and listen to your professor. Some ways to do this is getting enough sleep so that you will feel rested and ready to go to class. If you stay up all night on TikTok, which I'm not saying that I haven't done before, I've definitely done this before, but you're not going to feel motivated to get up once your alarm goes off, and you'll probably sleep through class. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, it just means that you'll miss that lecture, which could be crucial for your grade for that class. Prioritizing sleep is so important. I always like to catch up on sleep during the weekends, and then throughout the weekdays I try and get at least 7.5 hours. I always aim for like 8.5. One thing that I've also been doing, and this obviously, talk to your doctor about this, talk to your mom, talk to your dad, I don't know, but I've also been doing sleep spray, which has melatonin in it. So at like 10 p.m. I'll use the sleep spray, let it sit there, and then I find it easier to go to bed, because sometimes even if I'm not on technology and stuff, I'll just be rolling around and can't sleep. So I definitely recommend thinking about melatonin or maybe CBD. CBD also like kind of relaxes you and makes you go to bed earlier. I just want to make sure that this is focused, so I'm going to come a little bit closer. My second thing is time. So a lot of times when people don't go to class, they're like, well, I have to study for my test, I have to do this, I have to do this. Totally get that, but prioritizing time management is super important. One way that I like to do this is to look at my day and think, what has been sucking time out of my day that I could cut out? And one of these things, as we all are guilty of, or as a lot of us are guilty of, is TikTok. It takes up so much of my day, and while I do like a lot of the content that I watch, and I feel like a lot of it is like helpful and I learn things, it is definitely a time sucker and is so addictive. I think all of us can agree on this. Long story short, I set time restrictions on TikTok to be 30 minutes a day, and so I get a 5-minute warning, and then after I've been on it for 30 minutes, it like doesn't really let me open the app. I can turn it off if I want to. However, it just makes me more mindful of like, wow, I have spent a half hour on this. Maybe I could study so that I could get to bed early and actually go to class tomorrow. It's all about setting those habits for yourself. Also, scheduling just so that it's not last minute. If I know I have a class, for example, on Tuesday for marketing, I'll start studying on realistically on like Sunday and Monday, splitting it up into 2 days, and then on Tuesday morning I can still go to my class because I've already studied for 2 large chunks of time. So really write in your study time, and then for me, I love checking off tasks. So I always write like 30 minutes of studying for marketing, and then I can cross it off and it's done. Because I hate how studying isn't super tangible, so sometimes I feel unproductive when I'm studying, which really does not make sense, but I've made it feel tangible by adding that time to it, if that makes sense. So really schedule in your study time, schedule in your time for yourself, everything like that in your planner, so that you won't have things that you have to do during your 50-minute class. So that's all about how I prioritize going to class and why I think it's so important. Next is really about creating relationships with your professors. So if you do start studying early, for example, let's say I have marketing on Wednesday and I started studying on Sunday, I will have time on Monday to go ask my professor a question for the test before or after class, or during their office hours before Wednesday. This makes it so that it's not rushed. If you're studying the night before, do not email your professor being like, I don't understand this, because that's just so inconsiderate and they're probably not going to answer, so they'll probably ghost you. So let's not do that. But if you actually make time like the week before, or at least a few days before, to go in and ask your professor questions, it's what they're paid for. It's what a lot of them want to do. And even if they don't, this is your education. Take it into your own hands, if that makes sense. And this also creates relationships with your professors. Sometimes you might need a letter of recommendation from a professor or something like that. I haven't yet. Again, it's your education. Like, I tell my friends this all the time. They're like, I don't want to go ask my teacher questions because they're rude about it. I've had great teachers here, but obviously not everybody in every organization can be amazing. So sometimes teachers can be snappy about questions or things like that. But really, I just tell them it's your education. You have to ask, and that's what they're paid for, is to teach. So if you're not understanding something and can't figure it out, go ask them. Next is just how I take notes. So maybe I'll like show a little screen of like one of my notes, but pretty much I prefer virtual notes except for in slow-paced classes. So in slow-paced classes, I will write paper notes, and honestly, they're not always super organized. Like, here's my notes from like creativity class that so I broke it up into like smaller bullet points just so I can like know what it is. I add the date. Pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to talk about my online notes that I take for most of my classes, because in like 90% of classes the professor moves pretty quickly, and so I am not a quick writer, so I prefer typing. I have a different Google Doc for each class, and depending on if the class is cumulative or not, so if it's cumulative, I'll just keep one Google Doc for the whole year, or if it's like kind of section based, like 3 big tests for the semester, I'll do 3 different docs because I don't really need to reference back to the other content. I label it the name. Sometimes I add an emoji just so that I can find the Google Doc quicker based off the color of the emoji that I'll remember. I like to title each day in light pink, and then every broad topic I add a blue, and then every sub definition to the blue broad topic I highlight in yellow. And then obviously I use the bullet points. I do like shift and then the little asterisk, I think is what it's called, in order to create a bullet so that I can just be typing really quickly and I don't have to scroll up, find the little dot 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 thing, you know, the bullet thing trick that I like to do. And if I don't have time to highlight, I'll just do that after class or in lulls of the lecture. And I found that this really helps me stay organized. And then I also use my planner religiously. I use my Google Planner for large events, and then I use my paper planner for day to day. I've also been scheduling in my paper planner my social life and my workouts and my mental health thing that I'm doing that day. I obviously can't always do school, work, mental health, physical health, everything in one day, but I really like to schedule it to make time so that I can know. And this goes back to really how important scheduling time is, so that you don't have to miss your classes, because it's really just a domino effect. If you miss your class, you won't understand the content, and then you'll do poorly on the test. I know this is a lot of information. I apologize. You're doing great listening. We're almost done. One more section in this video. Now that we've gone over the importance of going to class, how to make time to go to class, the importance of questions, and how I take notes, I really want to talk about studying. So as I've kind of touched on before, I like to study in multiple chunks of time because I get really overwhelmed if I'm studying for one test all in one setting, and I also feel like I can't remember the content as well. And also it's proved by science that if you study for multiple days, it's way better than the same amount of time studying in one chunk of time. So for example, if I studied tonight for a test for an hour, I would remember that stuff less than if I had studied for 20 minutes for 3 days. So really it's in your favor, and you're spending the same amount of time at the end of the day if you break it up. I also like to set timers on my phone for 20 minutes. So once that timer goes off, I know I can have a 5-minute break. And I also set timers for my breaks so that I can go back to studying. I've found that knowing that the timer is about to go off, okay, I must have less than 20 minutes of this, kind of makes me think about the assignment differently. It's not never ending. I'll have a break soon, is what I always think. And then once I have my break, I set a timer because that flies by and I could have a very long break, especially if I open like Pinterest or TikTok. So I try to not do that, and I set a timer for myself. And then once that timer goes off, I know it's time to get back to work, but I'll have another break in 20 minutes. I don't do this all the time, but I do this during like midterms, finals, and if I have like a really big project due and need to get it done as soon as possible. I really honestly should listen to myself and do this more, even for like daily homework, just so that I'm remembering to take a break, because it's also beneficial if you look away from your screen and like don't think about the content for a little while and then to come back to it. This applies to like memory, also like writing a paper, really anything. I think a brain break is very beneficial. Oh yeah, and then once you have had your first test in each class, so for me this just happened because it's midterms, so like 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, who knows. But I've now had a test in all of my classes that are test-based, and so I know how the tests will be formed. So I study much differently for application-based tests and for definition-based tests. So for definition-based tests, I will just make flashcards and study the definitions, not really think about how they relate to each other. One trick that I like to do for definitions is I like to create really extreme stories. The more extreme, the better, and the more probable it is that you will remember it. Okay, so I will give you an example with how I remembered the countries in Europe. And it's very strange, so just stay with me, but pretty much how I remembered it is, I'm just gonna read it out loud and I'll say which countries it talks about. So Germany is super big, so I started with it and I said Germany had never, which is the Netherlands, which is to the left of Germany, had a Belgian waffle. And Belgium is right by them and is very small, so I think about a waffle being small. And then I think about, there were some Francy boots. So France and then Italy by each other kind of, and Italy looks like kind of like a shoe in my mind. And then they twisted their ankle or twisted their ankle. That's Switzerland. And then you jump over France and then it's and sprained it. So I know this is like so extreme, but that's one way that I like to kind of remember definition-based things. And then for application-based tests, I like to talk out loud, and my roommates could tell you they can literally hear me talking to myself before tests sometimes, because I pretend like I'm the teacher and I explain things and then I try and make connections like I would if I were teaching the material. This just really helps me, especially talking out loud, makes it so that I don't skip over anything and kind of explain it how Jamie would as a teacher. And then also, last thing, just like setting rewards for yourself and taking time to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I'm so glad that I got that paper done. I'm gonna go treat myself to an overpriced coffee. It's really important to give yourself rewards and to celebrate those little moments instead of being like, oh my gosh, well, I have a paper due next week, so I can't even think about how I did well on this. Take time to reward yourself for the hard work that you are completing, because school is hard. It is hard to learn all different material all day from different teachers and different learning styles, and then have tests that maybe some stuff was left out. So if you're struggling right now in school, I totally get it. I really hope that these tips were helpful. If you have any more tips that you'd like to share with people or share with me, please leave them in the comments below. And I just really appreciate you watching this video, and I hope that if it's your midterm time, that your midterms went well. And yeah, stay tuned for a room tour and a day in the life videos that will be coming from me very, very soon. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.